Welcome back to The Line. This week, the Albuquerque Journal published a series of stories investigating the local impact of the Trump administration's new tariffs on things like steel, aluminum, and especially lumber. They looked at how costs are already going up for New Mexico businesses, especially in Santa Teresa, where the cost of aluminum has jumped about 40 cents in recent months. That's a lot of money if you're in the business. Now, in addition, local pecan growers are keeping a close eye on key markets like China, which have instituted their own tariffs in retaliation for the Trump administration's moves. And Giovanna, definitely too early to tell definitively what impact the tariffs would have, but there's a lot of early warning signs that could be troubling. I'll give you one in specific. The New Mexico Home Builders Association is talking about the price. I mentioned the price of lumber. And even if you have like a 15 or 20% spike, that is going to be passed through. The homeowner or the buyer of that home is going to have to pay a little bit more money because of that spike. So it is a problem for all of us. So how do we look at this early on?
Well, I mean, this is a policy that just is going to impact us locally hugely, and we're just beginning to investigate that with this journal story and this discussion and others. And but I think we're going to see that it is going to raise costs on New Mexico families.
That's right.
And ultimately lose money for New Mexico if
That's
we're,
right.
The pecan situation. I mean, there's a lot going on here that we're going to have to watch. And, I think it's clear that this is one of the things that's really making Democrats quite enthusiastic about the upcoming election.
Right.
So we'll see
Right.
if we can change things.
Yeah, that's a good point. Eric, when you think about it, I mentioned Santa Teresa. Boy, we just can't afford to lose momentum. Let's put it that way. Any given thing that we have in New Mexico that's working and moving forward, we cannot afford anything that kind of gets in the way of that. But a lot of this is also very complicated because you've got a lot of suppliers who are hiking, domestic producers, by the way, of this stuff, aluminum, who are taking advantage of these tariffs and raising their own prices so they can get competitive with people. You know what I mean? Nothing happens in a vacuum. So should we be concerned here? Should business owners be really concerned here? What's your sense of it?
I think everyone should. I mean, ultimately, the U.S. has always had one of the most open markets in the world, right? And we, Democrats and Republicans tend to sort of disagree on what else should be in this trade policy. What do we do on human rights and environmental issues? But there seems to be sort of a consensus that it's a good idea to try to keep our market open and to keep other markets open for the good of the economy, right? And so it's not just the New Mexico economy. This is going to have big implications. We're talking about some of our closest allies and trading partners, Canada and a lot of our European allies, to really be essentially going down the road of a trade war, because we have the largest trade deficit we have is with China. I get the fact that China. I actually agree that China is we need to play hardball with China. But to slap tariffs, it's just an indication of the Trump administration not having a very thoughtful trade policy and really shooting from the hip and listening to whoever got to the president. And then everybody trying to pick up the pieces and how's it going to affect states, how's it going to affect the world economy, how's it going to affect our alliances, our trade agreements with NAFTA and other countries. So I think that the chickens are coming home to roost on sort of just a bad, sort of very cavalier decision, which I think was short-sighted.
Interesting point there. Alana, when you think about it again, the idea that we are vulnerable because of federal decisions, that makes things difficult. We're having trouble enough getting things moving forward. We don't need this kind of thing. So we're sort of stuck with it. There's nothing we can do about it, but is there any way we can protect ourselves here? Financially, is there anything we can actually do as New Mexicans?
There's not much individually or areas can do with a trade war, if that's what comes about. But I think there is this, looking back, there's always been this tension sort of between free trade and fair trade.
Right.
And
there's a difference.
we're really trying to sort that out. And it's very interesting that since basically Bill Clinton, Democrats and Republicans have been free traders until Trump. But prior to that, Reagan was all about fair trade, and they were smashing Toshibas and all these kinds of things. So, so maybe if there's a lot of noise, there might be something that good comes about it. But if we're not careful about who we, particularly our local trading partners, Canada and Mexico, I think it could be a huge problem.
That's right. Canada, 20% spike on lumber from those guys. We get a lot of lumber from Canada. Big part of the home building business across the country. That's my old business. Whenever you had a price spike, it was always a problem for builders. So I asked the same question, however. Are we in a super vulnerable spot here that we just have to ride out and deal with, or is there something we can do better here, so the bite just won't be quite as harsh?
Well, I mean, I know you'll find it hard to believe. I don't think we're in a vulnerable spot.
Okay.
I mean, I disagree with some of the comments at the table. I believe that we're correcting the market position that we've been in. I think we've taken a long time of kind of
Nationally, you're saying, or
globally?
Globally,
I think we've taken a very back seat over the last 8 to 10 years of trying to appease everybody globally, of trying to work with everybody,
Right.
making all kinds of deals to make sure that everybody around us is happy, and who suffered has been the American worker. And I think now, whether you like it or not, and I've said it many times, I'm getting tired of the disclaimer. I'm not the biggest Trump fan. I'm not anti-Trump. I think, he's doing what's surprising is he's doing exactly what he said he was going to do on the campaign. So nobody in the country should be surprised, and nobody globally should be surprised. I think he said that we're going to make sure that everyone.
I hear you, but you would think that between the campaign and the time to actually sit down to make policy, someone would have intervened and said, "This is
Why?
how the world works."
Why would-
it's not a campaign promise. This is the
It ain't about a
reality
campaign
of,
promise. It's right. It is a reality that the Americans in this country,
Yeah.
our people should be going to work. That Americans should be going to work.
No
that
argument.
we shouldn't be cutting these deals, putting Americans out of work and shifting jobs overseas. That President Trump said we're going to do what we can do to bring these jobs back. Look, we heard about the griping about when he did the stuff on the refrigerators, and 2 plants opened up in the United States to make refrigerators. So I mean, I think at the end of the day, we didn't get here overnight, Gene.
I hear
We're
you.
not going to fix it overnight.
Yeah.
But I think that there's this constant cheering that every decision he makes he's going to fail at, and I think he's proven that. Look, the price of
But
aluminum dropped.
isn't it early days to make a prediction? I mean, we don't know if these tariffs are going to do what you're saying they're going to do. We don't know.
We're not saying that. But the entire table said it was going to be, doom and gloom.
Yeah,
And
but
you were right on top of it.
Well,
Hey,
Dan, I'm not sure what you're reading, but like if you look at all of
Yeah.
the effects across the country to American jobs, like we can't just do whatever we want. We close our markets, we jack up our tariffs. Guess what? Our trading partners,
That's right.
including our leading trading partners like Canada and Mexico, are going to say, well, they're not schmucks. They're going to raise their tariffs.
Of course
Who
they
does
are.
that hurt?
That's right.
American workers.
I don't think it hurts American
I
workers.
actually think the studies are going to show, because this is what has always happened, is that it's going to hit us harder because our market's already open, right? It's going to hurt us with other markets because what we get when we do trade policies, we get other countries to bring down their trade barriers because we've always been one of the most open markets in the
We've
world.
been an extremely open market. And I don't think by imposing these tariffs across the industries and the countries that are unfairly affecting the market is going to be something that he's going to look at. And I think it's shown that there's been an immediate uptick in some of these things. It's hurting others right away. Look, we heard doom and gloom from the aluminum people. We heard doom and gloom from the alcohol people, right? The beer can folks. That's
right. I forgot
when
about
it first came out.
That's right.
And over the next 90 days after it happened, the price of aluminum actually dropped a little bit in this country. So I think at the end of the day, you got to give these policies time to work. Gene, I'm not saying that they're going to work. I'm not saying that everything he's done is right. But you asked me, you got to give it time. You do. But many people seem to be, the minute he implements a policy like this, like correcting the market, I believe, in the trade disparity with some of these countries, we have a whole host of people that are like, there's no way it's going to work. I think it takes time.
We'll see where it goes from there. Now, that's all the time we have on that right now.